Hey everybody, welcome back. So in the previous video we looked at freezing objects in ECMAScript 5 and basically what that does for us in terms of making all our objects read-only and so on and so forth. But we're going to move past that now because that was probably the last video in that area, and we're going to look at arrays. Now in terms of what is covered in ECMAScript 5 and arrays, basically what they've done is they've listed a whole set of helper functions to basically look at the arrays that you currently have. Now the first three I thought I'd cover in this video is Array, IndexOf, and Last.IndexOf. Now some of these would be quite obvious to you from other languages, but interestingly enough, JavaScript didn't have a function for determining what an array was, which was kind of interesting. And there were a number of different ways that people tried to do it, and I'm going to demonstrate some of those examples in a minute. IndexOf and Last.IndexOf, also not something that was really specified on arrays. It was for strings, you can search on strings, but not so much arrays. So let's see how all three of these work. So I'm going to jump over to the code, and the first one I'm going to start with is array. So I'm going to declare an array up here, obviously equals, I'm going to put in the numbers 3, 1, 1, and 3. We'll keep it all odd. And then I'm also going to create a non-array, which I'll just create as an object at this point. Now, before ECMAScript 5, a lot of people used to try and do this in a number of different ways, trying to work out if array here is in fact an array or not. Alright? So one of the options was to do something like this. I could go console.log array instance of array. Right? And this in Node will actually work. So if I come over and I run, was it array basics? So if I go node array basics, you'll see it returns true. Now, this is all well and good, and you can use this way of doing it inside of your Node code and it will never break. However, the reason why it wasn't ideal for ECMAScript 3 code was that when using it in a browser, it didn't work when you applied it to the frames array on the document object. Now, if you don't know anything about web browsers and creating JavaScript for web documents, then you may not understand why that was a problem. But that was the problem, was that it wasn't consistent in all areas of the web browser. So it would fail only under that one circumstance when you were trying to get stuff from the frames array. So that was one way of doing it, which a lot of people used for a long time until they found that issue. Another way to do it, which was, it was in fact foolproof, but once you see it, it's not the cleanest. So you've got object.prototype, so people would go and look at the prototype, then they would call toString, right? So they're saying, here's the toString method. I want to call the toString method with an instance of an array, right? So this would call the toString method of this object here, and then the result of that had to match this. It had to match a square bracket object array. Right? And in fact, this also works, and it's quite successful. So if I jump over again, we can see in a minute that it will in fact return true. And just to give you an idea, that it does return false for the other one, I'll also add in this like so. Oops. So copy and paste, add non-array to here, and you'll see this will return false for both these instances. So come down, and true, false, right? So that was kind of two of the old ways of doing it. However, you can see they're both a little bit clunky. So what ECMAScript 5 aimed to do was to create an actual method on the array object itself that would allow you to quickly check if something was an array or not. It was very simple. It was console.log Array.isArray. And you pass in the array. Right? And just to prove that it also works for non-arrays, I'll do the same thing for non-array. And save. And then jump over. And as you can see, you also get true and false. Okay? So going forward, if you've got fresh code to work with, and you're using ECMAScript 5, don't use any of that. Use those two lines right there, okay, to determine if something is an array or not. So that is basically is array. All right, not much to it, just that. That's simple as that. The other two, which were added to ECMAScript 5, believe it or not, and a lot of people debate this, saying, "Oh, well, I used to be able to use IndexOf with a string and blah blah blah." That was on a string. IndexOf and last_IndexOf were not a part of the array object in ECMAScript 5. Right? To my understanding, for what I've read. So, and from what I can remember, that's also the case. So, basically how you can use that is very simple. So, for the array I've got above, if I want to find something inside that array, say I want to find index of 2, for example, this acts the same as when you use IndexOf in a string. So because I don't actually have a 2 in that array above, this will return -1. Okay? So I'll test that in a minute. I'll keep going. So you've got Array.indexOf, and say I want to get the first 3 in this circumstance. So because I'm trying to get the first 3, this one will return 0 because this is the first position. So the first index will be 0. Console.log again. You can go Array.indexOf 1, and that's going to return the second position at index 0, index 1, I should say. So far so good. And then just to add a little bit more functionality to this method, you can actually also specify a starting point. So say I want to look for 1 again, but this time I want to look at everything after index 1, then technically this should come up with 2, because we've looked past these first 2, and the next one it finds is at index 2. So what we should get when we look at this now is we'll get true, false, -1, 0, 1, and 2. So let's just quickly check that. And there you go. And we didn't get 2 for the second one. Interesting. And that is because I made a mistake. This is not inclusive. Sorry, it is inclusive. So starting from index 1 would be 1. But now I'm starting at index 2 and I've changed the wrong one. Now I'm starting at index 2. The value that comes out the end should be 2 here. And there we go. So a slight little mistake in my logic there, but all good. So -1, 0, 1, and 2 is what we expected. Right? So with IndexOf, then obviously, if that's looking for the first entry in the array, then you can guess what last_IndexOf is doing. Yeah, that's it. It's getting the last entry in the array. So if I change all these now to last_IndexOf, I'll just grab this last bit. last_IndexOf. So if I start at, if I'm looking for a last_IndexOf of 2, 2 is not in the list, so again it will return -1. Last_IndexOf of 3, well, we're looking for the last entry this time, which happens to be the last one in the field. So that's 0, 1, 2, that'll be the third index, 4th position. Last_IndexOf of 1, well, that's looking for the last version, so that's 0, 1, 2. So this will be 2. And then this one here, we're looking for the last_IndexOf of 1 starting at 2. Well, this will still be 2 because we're taking out the first 2 positions. So it's still going to find this one here. Okay, so it's still going to be 2. So let's quickly just check those last 4 values. And run this. And you can see, after those 4, we've got -1, 3, 2, and 2. And that's what we were expecting. So that's it for this video, a very short video. In the next video, we're going to look at what I refer to as predicates and predicate functions on the array object in ECMAScript 5, and I'll cover probably 2 or 3 of those. So I'll see you in the next video.